It's great to be here today with these illustrious panelists and discussing this very important topic. I know Paul Brody and a bunch of them actually did mention this subject, so I'm glad that panel has led up to our panel. I'm Julian Gordon. I'm the VP. That is actually incorrect. I'm the VP for the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust Foundation, which used to be the Hyperledger Foundation. We are the Linux Foundation's hub for the development of not just blockchain technology, but all decentralized technologies. We have 100 members. We have 17 projects. I think Jisu was mentioned a number of times in the last project. We are completely open development, open governance. Everyone is welcome. Diversity is our strength. So everyone, please get involved at Linux Foundation, Decentralized Trust. You're all very welcome, including many of our projects. We have many members, including the Bank of England, including the Reserve Bank, MAS, and yesterday the Hong Kong Monetary Authority also became a member. We're becoming a place that we can develop a lot of these underlying technologies, which we talked about previously, for those markets, those new markets that are developing. Also, we're famous, as you know, in developing enterprise-grade technology. So this is the kind of technology that we all can use and we all can develop together. And it's all based open source, that all of us are smart, and any one of us, so please do come and get involved. So now to today's panel. This, as we said, is a very important subject, especially, as it says outside, capital markets. We're in the enterprise world here, right? So how do regulators, privacy is very, very important. So before we start our conversation, I'd ask the panelists to really introduce yourselves, what you're doing, and talk a little bit about yourself, and maybe we'll just go down from here. Jisu, do you want to start?
Hello all, I'm Jisu Park from Suho.io. Suho is based in mostly Seoul, Korea. We support financial institutions and enterprise and conglomerates with a comprehensive digital asset platform. So we gave them managed blockchain technology, especially the CBDC area. So we're participating on a Bank of Korea CBDC voucher and payments as well. And we expanded from Korea to the other APAC region right now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi.
Anurag, yeah.
Anurag Soin, product lead for digital asset services ANZ Bank. My role is focused on digital asset services, including stablecoin. We have one. Tokenization engine, as well as each problem which customers facing, how can we solve that using our digital asset services?
Yeah.
So we go in, there's a problem, and we see we can make it 10x better. That's what we do.
Okay, thank you.
Peter Pauwels, I'm a product lead for CCIP at Chainlink Labs. And as my focus is on CCIP, of course, solving the interoperability problem in this space is my key focus, but also doing that in a privacy-preserving way, which we will be talking about here, because it seems a bit of intuitively, it's a bit of a contradiction, right? Privacy and interoperability, you're closing and yet you're opening up.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very challenging, but also makes it a very attractive topic to spend my time on. So I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Great panel. So let's set the scene. So how are financial institutions, enterprises, and their technology partners like Chain Labs, who, by the way, are also a member of Linux Foundation Centralized Trust, achieving privacy and data security for digital assets today? I think we'll start with our end user, Anurag, who lives in the real world.
Yeah, it's very interesting because when we think about privacy, we have to think from various levels. Privacy at the network level, that how people who are inside the network should be able to see all the transaction, versus people who are outside the network. If we take that lens of inside the network versus outside the network, what we have seen in past, I will say 5 odd years, we started with a lot of institutional trust to achieve privacy. What I mean by that? If you look at all the early blockchain systems, I will not name banks, some of them may be present here as well, but they went with the model of either I will host all the nodes, or we are the 4 banks, we are going to host a node. Guess what? It's completely rely on institutional trust. Nothing wrong with it. But what we are seeing now is a migration from just institutional trust to cryptographic trust. Some of the technologies like ZK roll-up technology, so if you take the idea of privacy and say, I want privacy not with institutional trust, but actually with cryptographic trust, which is a big shift. What I mean by that? The moment you are able to say that all the transactions which are happening in a privacy-enabled chain, let's say an L2, a Validium, and I'm checkpointing it to Ethereum or your choice of public chain, the moment you have done that, you have created a irrefutable proof of the entire history of transactions. So now, what we are seeing is there's a transition from just the institutional trust to cryptographic trust while maintaining the privacy. And it's an evolution. I will not say that everyone is there, but we are seeing more and more when people are talking about layered architecture. They are saying there is a layer where you derive trust from, and that can be cryptographic trust while maintaining the privacy. So I think it's a journey. We are still not there. Nirvana will look like maybe homomorphic encryption, where we are able to achieve privacy on public chains, or trusted execution environments executing transactions as a node for public chains. Those are possibilities, but we are not there now. So I think it's a journey we are on to migrate from institutional trust to cryptographic trust.
Yeah, and do you think, I think we discussed this, in the Web3 world, we just take this for granted, right?
Yeah.
This privacy. So do you think today we're still, people are learning about the fact they need privacy and trust? Or
I think there are a lot of use cases which will just not be possible, as Paul was saying, correct? Like,
yeah.
There are trade secrets of supply chain, at what price I procure something. Until unless we solve for privacy, we will not able to have those use cases come to fruition, which is ultimately what we want, correct? So where we are now is people are experimenting in the safer environments, either through institutional trust or a bit of cryptographic trust. But over a period of time, we will definitely see more of these use cases, and probably if we get a time, we'll talk about some of the use cases we are working on.
So, Peter, so how successful has this been? I mean, I think you have a great purview over many things that are happening in this space.
I think for this audience, regulated financial institutions, I think it's a bit of a mixed situation. I think on public chains, there are very interesting technical cryptographic trust privacy solutions available, but it's technology focused. It is not really designed with regulated financial institutions in mind and their requirements, because for them it's not just about the technology. It's mostly not about the technology, right? It's about legal risk compliance that is top of mind to succeed in that space. And so I think we have seen projects, I won't say names, but that give extreme privacy, right? About transactions, about balances, wallet addresses, etc., but that just don't meet those compliance and legal requirements that we see today. And so there, I would say that we're not there yet. I think in those environments, you see a hybrid model where it's a mix of off-chain, doing all the privacy-sensitive stuff, and then putting as minimal as possible on-chain, and then the participants, it's up to their appetite, to what extent they want to feel comfortable with what is available on-chain. And maybe centralized exchanges, they use omnibus wallets, etc., to improve the privacy, but that's a bit the situation at the moment. I think for private chains, it's very different, right? There, you have much more control about the access to the network level. I think there the challenge we see is a lot of the private chains that have made it over the years, and they have been successful in that regard, they are, how would I say it, very focused on a specific use case, or on a specific asset, or a specific jurisdiction. And I think that is a challenge, because you need a lot of volume, you need a lot of activity in order to make it worth your while. Because I think Anurag and ANZ can testify to that. Setting up a private chain is one thing. Making it scalable, reliable, upgrading it, maintaining it, operating, monitoring it, that is quite an effort, right? It's not that straightforward. And especially if you do it in a consortium, where you have multiple entities, because then you also have the governance aspect on top of it. And it's not just about the technical standards and what platform are we going to use. It's also about legal, about business standards and governance. So I think that is a challenge that only probably very big institutions make them successful in this space for private chains. And another big challenge, I think, is liquidity access. I think you will end up with a lot of small pockets of liquidity in specific jurisdictions, specific assets. And I think we, in the meantime, get used to much more efficient markets than that, right? And we need more access to liquidity, avoid fragmentation in order to have more streamlined, efficient markets, have better price discovery, etc. Because that is, I think, what people also need, users.
I will just like to add to Peter's one point which he said. To achieve privacy, if we ended up making trade-offs, which will make us worse off from security perspective, price discovery perspective, liquidity perspective, we should not opt for those solutions, full stop. Because this technology, the reason people are adopting is it has to be better, it has to be faster, it has to be cheaper. And at any point of time, when we are designing the system, the first thing we keep in our mind is we should not be worse off on these things when designing privacy. One example is if you're trying to achieve privacy and your solution is, let's just build an omnibus account, guess what? You have just sacrificed the entire customer on-chain asset segregation. Just one decision. I want to achieve privacy. I will not have customer assets segregated on-chain. Yes, you have achieved privacy. Guess what? Is that the best idea? Jury's still out there. So I think when we are deciding, and as the people who are leading a lot of these changes, we need to have some thumb rules in our mind that yes, privacy, but at what cost? Is it worth achieving privacy if you end up creating, let's take an example of a carbon credit market. If we end up with like carbon credits trading in 50 different places, we end up making them private. Amazing. Guess what? The price discoverability is worse off. Liquidity is worse off. Customer experience is worse off. So how do we design for privacy at the same time not compromising on these key attributes? And that's something which me and Peter have been breaking our head for the last 1 year. But we'll talk about that.
Let's talk about that. That's great insight. Because ultimately, there's no point. The technology is not here for its own sake. It's for some societal or business commercial outcome. And within the financial world, you have certain metrics you have to hit, right? That you have to regulate. So now let's turn to, now we're talking about buckets of liquidity. Obviously, I think we're talking about interoperability, right? So now we're going to probably live in this interoperable world, right? So what is the situation? I think I talked to Jisu about privacy and data protection in this interconnected world. Is the need for privacy a barrier, as we discussed?
Yeah, as two awesome guys introduced, like privacy should be considered alongside with the interoperability.
Yeah.
So let me explain with the real world cases. So due to the nature of the DLT, distributed ledger technology, all the informations will be spread into the nodes network, which means all informations will be shared into all the participants in the native level. So while we participate on a CBDC or the real asset STO, all the participants like banks, it's quite weird. They doesn't want to share the actual their large royal merchants and retails between the banks. But like DLT is the distributed, so which means we're cooperative technology. But because of the business perspective, they also should care about the privacy for their business perspective and also their retail user perspective as well, because of like GDPR and personal information. And and also we can consider about like security perspective as well. As I mentioned, because of the DLT, thank you so much.
No problem.
It's quite cold, right?
Yes, it's very dry.
All the source code on smart contracts are also the identical, and environment is also identical. So the impact of the vulnerability propagation is way impactful than the traditional software. So if some smart contract exploited, all this vulnerability and exploitations are spreading into all these different institutional levels of platforms. So we need some care about the data privacy, especially for the vulnerability and a security perspective, and also their personal information, merchant retails information as well. So I think like privacy and privacy and interoperability is a quite opposite value prop, but should care with at the same time, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
No. I think we're confirming that, right? And maybe we were going to double down on that, but why is success so important in this area? Anurag, do you want to talk to that?
So last year at SmartCon, we presented how we can have one customer seamlessly purchase an asset present on other chain and get it delivered to them. And that was perfect, right? Like interoperability at its best. Then, as real world hit you, we are working with an asset issuer, and they have very clearly highlighted the issuance process, the price discovery process, is the privacy is the most important part, because we can't have what offers people are putting for which debt issuance be available publicly. And we are like, CCIP is great, but doesn't solve for this problem. And that's when me and Peter, we are like, how do we go about solving this problem where, one thing is, let's ask all the issuers in the world to come to my chain. I don't think that's going to happen. And our philosophy is we are in the world of there are going to be lots of chain, which will service all different kinds of assets. So if we go by that philosophy, I can't go and ask every issuer that come to my chain, because then subsequently all other banks will ask for the same thing. So then interoperability is really important. But if I interoperate with a version of CCIP, which was present last year, I end up disclosing to the node operators, because ultimately for interoperability, what you need? You need someone to relay the message from one chain to another, correct? And trigger some smart contracts. And if we used what we have used for the public assets, then we end up disclosing the prices which investors are proposing for this debt issuance, for example. So then this great guy came up with some solution. Maybe there's a big team behind him, but it looked like it's him. So Peter, would you like to talk about how we have architected the solution?
Yeah, because I think it's tempting to say, okay, we have these two chains and we want privacy in between them, interoperability at privacy. So let's put something in place specific for those two chains. And when we are designing solutions, when we are coming up with architectures, you don't want to focus at the problem in hand. You look at the bigger picture, right? You think about simplicity, scalability, and at a given point, Anurag made a great point in a meeting. He said, look, we are not building our own local area network, right? With our customers, they want to do online banking, web banking. They use the public infrastructure, the public internet as infrastructure. And on top of that, you have confidential communication layer. That is what enabled online banking, online payments to share confidential information about your credit card details, your passwords for accounts. The whole Web 2 is built basically on TLS. And the realization came, we need something like this on top of CCIP or enabled by CCIP, that we can use a public CCIP network and yet maintain full privacy end-to-end. And to what you mentioned at the beginning, we had to address two problems. One is the privacy of the data at rest on the network level. You have a private chain. It's private for a reason. You don't want everyone to see everything. So we don't want to just give access to the CCIP network to the private chain, because then they see everything, right? And there is a lot of stuff happening on a private chain that should not be seen by those entities. They should see what they need to see to operate CCIP, but nothing else, not all the customer balances and the transactions and salary payments or whatever that are happening on that chain. So that was one requirement. And the other requirement was privacy in flight, because node operators, when they go between private chains and they have to relay a message, They shouldn't see the sender and the receiver and the tokens and the amounts and all the data, the details of the business transaction. That should remain private. So we followed fundamentally that concept of, let's say, HTTPS on the internet, of having point-to-point encryption on top of that transport layer, so that we have also privacy both in transit and at rest.
Yeah. The part which is very important here is that I say that we cannot make trade-offs which make us worse off, correct?
Yep.
So even when we were designing this solution, the focus was how we can make sure that we are able to interoperate and enable our customers to purchase assets without worrying about, is it present on a public chain? Is it present on a private chain? Because like today, when you want to send an email, how many of us think about like, is it going to Gmail versus Yahoo? It just goes, correct?
Exactly.
You click a button, it goes. And until unless we make it, because every technology at its nascent stage, we all love to talk about it. Yeah. Hopefully, this kind of a panel should be redundant in a few years' time. Otherwise, we are in a very, very bad place. Now, if you think that it can't be worse off, we have to think about how private chains interoperate with public chains here.
Correct, yeah.
This solution, when we were designing, one of the key objectives was the same solution should able to support both private chains and public chains. And by having this layer of privacy manager, from the word go, the moment you have this solution implemented, and if I may be getting my numbers wrong, CCIP contracts are deployed on 17 chains, mainnets. 18 maybe. Maybe it keeps changing. Yeah. These guys are fast. The moment you have that, all you are doing is encoding a message and saying, it should go to this particular chain selector, correct? And when you are doing that for a public network, you are able to trigger those contracts on the public network and get whatever you want, maybe do a swap, maybe buy an NFT, and get it delivered to you in your chain without disclosing any activity of your network layer, right? So those are the principles we live and die by, is how we make sure we are able to interoperate at the same time, doesn't make things worse off. But again, there are still, I will not say we have reached the perfect solution, because one of the other worries here is, if you're in an interoperable world, finality will be really important. And when we are in the world of where optimistic stack is there, ZK stack is there, and I would just like to paint a picture of combined privacy with lack of finality, and we are in a disaster.
Where?
We are in a big disaster.
Yes, exactly.
What does that mean? It's like, imagine you end up with a privacy-based, optimistic roll-up or scale-up or Validium, whatever. And after 7 days, asset has left your chain. It is present on some other chain. And there was a challenge period. And this asset gets reverted. We end up in the same situation when you have an asset which is not backed by something. So as we are thinking about privacy, finality will become very important. Because if people are not able, they're trusting what you're saying, correct? When you're sending a token, they're saying, this token is sent. And this is the other thing, which is a trade-off between user experience here. Because I can say my finality is achieved in, say, 2 minutes. Because I'm writing to the L1, my zero knowledge proofs every 2 minutes. But then user have to wait 2 minutes. Do I want that? Or do I want to immediately release the asset? So those are the kind of dimensionalities which will emerge, that as you're solving for privacies, there are effects.
Yes.
And finality is one of those things, correct? Like, if people are not able to verify things, and if there is a delay on these things, then privacy can actually harm us a lot as well. So system designs of blockchain has to cater for all these considerations.
Yes, it has to work at the speed and desirability of a
it
trading
all.
market.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
It all. I mean, and as you say today, we just take it for granted, right? So we've got to build that, and as you say, hopefully in some point we won't need these panels because we're just taking it for granted, right?
Yeah.
It's built in. It's built in. So is there any kind of examples that you've worked on in this space?
While
Other
we're
use cases?
building like practical
Yeah.
applications from concept to practical infrastructure, so we, as like Anurag introduced, there's so many options for architecting. So to avoid the keeping privacy for the merchant and retail data exposed, we decided to build like fragmented Oracle data to each of the institutions to keep them each of the data private from each of the entities. So I'm also like totally agree that there's not the best practice yet. We should like taking care about like sharing all these state-of-the-art architecture between the entities to find the right way to keeping privacy, and also while we keep high performance and also the like 1 second finality for actual user benefits like that. That's one of our experience. So Oracle is also really not a simple problem, especially for the institutions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and for the like security part, we have expertise. We are leveraging like fully homomorphic encryptions, because without disclose all the smart contract source code, original source code, we should scanning the vulnerabilities of each of the source code. So we need to keep the source code encrypted and finding each of the vulnerabilities, especially for the purpose-bound money or voucher stuff or the like stablecoin like that. So each of the state-of-arts in the public and also can be applied in institutional financial services. So that kind of attempts we are really push the boundaries in this traditional finance sector right now.
Yeah, thank you. And I know you're doing some amazing work there in Korea. We only have 4.5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask a quick lightning round question, right? So, because we know we could do hours on this, right? So between 1 and 10, 10 being good, where are we today really being satisfied with privacy, and where in 5 years, between 1 and 10 years, will we be? Just the 1 and 10. And in 5 years' time, I will see whether it's right or not. Yeah. So we'll start with you. So between 1 and 10, where are we today?
I think today, I would say a 6, in the sense that we can pass the grade. I mean, we can have a passing grade.
We should have agreed on this number.
Yeah. I think there is room for improvement, especially on public chains, because in the end, ideally, that is what people want to go to, I believe. Public permissionless chains, it takes away a lot of concerns, efforts, costs of having to run your own chains. I think now it's a solution to a problem, but it's an intermediate solution. It's a stepping stone because of this privacy need. I do believe that in 5 to 10 years, we will get to a 9 out of 10, maybe a 10 out of 10, because you mentioned FHE, you have MPC, trusted execution environments. I think there are a lot of technical breakthroughs, evolutions that are taking place as we speak, that are really, really promising. I think the big challenge, and maybe a call to action, is don't just focus on the technology, because the legal, the risk, the compliance aspects is equally, if not more important. And don't wait until the very end of your journey to get that checkbox approval before you can you launch your solution. Because we have seen implementations and projects of cryptographic truth on chain for full privacy, transaction privacy, but they don't. They're not fit for purpose for this audience, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there is still some work to be done, but we will get there. Very confident.
Okay. So what are your numbers?
6 and let's say 10.
6 and 10. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Cool. We have 2 minutes remaining, so I will do 6 minus 2, 4. If we look around the entire landscape today, I will give a 6 or an 8 if we have more people or more organizations transacting in a privacy-enabled environment. Technology is there, but adoption is not. Adoption is not there because of just vague reasons. Today, people feel comfortable if they say, if something goes wrong, I can call ANZ. And evolution of these privacy technologies and cryptography, we have to transfer that trust from institutional to cryptographic trust.
Yeah.
And that is just not a technology problem, correct? It is a combination of technologically, regulation-wise, because when first cryptography or encryption was introduced, it was considered a weapon.
Yeah.
And going from a weapon for security of transaction, it takes time. So I will say a 4. What I will deem a 9 or a 10, when we are able to execute fully privacy-preserving transaction on public networks across interoperability of all of them in a compliant manner, which is recognized by ISO or standard bodies, where people feel that I can adopt this and not get jailed. So I think that's where I would say 9 or 10.
Okay. 6, 10.
Do you bring down your number?
4, 9.
No, but I think it's realistic. I think it's realistic in 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
to get there.
And Jisu,
Yeah, I only like
last.
a lot short. So I think like current is a 3 to 4.
Yeah.
And like after 5 years, it's gonna be like 7, 8. Because I think I'm super believe on that there is no 10 score for the privacy at all for the future as well. I think that's and all awesome guys already introduced a lot.
And I won't mention quantum. So, so thank you, panel. That was great. All you have. I think the message is this is a very important subject. Get involved, because if we don't have it solved, everything else is a challenge.
And you have been an amazing moderator.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.